Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I can't profess in any way to be a football fan. In fact, I don't really recognize many of the footballers these days. I remember David Beckham and Cristiano Ronaldo, but I really don't know any of the modern day footballers. But there is a footballer, an English footballer, who's been in the news an awful lot recently, and that footballer is called, his name is Marcus Rashford. Marcus Rashford is a young Manchester United football player, and he's been making the headlines not because of what he's been doing on the pitch, but rather what he's been doing off the pitch. So as well as being known for his football skills, he's also well known for the work that he's been doing over the past few years on childhood poverty and hunger. Marcus Rashford is very wealthy and very famous these days, but he actually grew up in a disadvantaged area of Manchester. And he has memories of his single mother struggling to make ends meet, struggling to think about how to put food on the table. So he has a very personal connection to this topic. And in recent years, he started working with a charity called Fair Share. And this charity has been involved in delivering free meals to children who are most vulnerable. And they really stepped up their activity during lockdown and distributed meals to children who just didn't have enough to eat, especially during the school holidays. So just to give you some context about school meals in the UK, there have been free school meals in the United Kingdom since 1906. So the idea was to give a hot meal to young people, to pupils at school, once a day. In the past, it was breakfast, but now it's usually lunch. And then they actually became compulsory for certain people in 1944. And this is around the time of the Second World War, of course, so it was to keep up morale. So who is exactly eligible for free school meals? Well, you need to be claiming certain benefits because you earn under a certain amount. So if you don't earn enough, you can claim these school meals. And it's been pointed out that during school holidays, the use of food banks tends to go up. So people who are eligible for school meals are covered during the school year, but as soon as the school holidays, there's a problem because hunger just doesn't go away. And this phenomenon is known as holiday hunger. And it's something that's existed for a long time, but it's really become exacerbated since the lockdown. So the government initially decided that they would extend free school meals during the Easter holidays. And then in June, Marcus Rashford led a campaign for the same to be done over the summer, and the government accepted. So the numbers of children affected over the summer were 1.3 million children. But it's said that this number could increase over the next months and years, depending on how the pandemic pans out. And Marcus Rashford's involvement in all of this was very important because he was a high-profile figure. He was also non-partisan. He wasn't speaking from a particular perspective of a political party. And he was also able to engage people who are not usually interested in politics. And this all seemed to be going very well. The government appreciated Marcus Rashford's role, and they awarded him an MBE, a member of the Order of the British Empire. So that was all well and good. But then things took a turn for the worse. In September, the government thought that they could just get back to normal and that they wouldn't have to provide free school meals anymore outside of term time. But then there was a problem. The opposition party, the Labour Party, wanted to continue Marcus Rashford's plan for the October half term. And Tory MPs, so those in government, decided to vote against it. They said, no, we don't need to do this anymore. The situation is getting better. Let's just go back to normal. But this was all exacerbated by the fact that in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, the local governments, the regional governments rather, had decided to reinstate school meals during the October holidays. So you could say this was really an own goal for the government. They were fighting on two fronts and not doing very well. On the one hand, they were fighting a well-loved public figure, a famous footballer. And on the other hand, they were refusing to back down on a very emotive issue. So this whole issue of refusing to feed children who could go hungry. And what was even more surprising was that the cost of extending the program wasn't extortionate. It was about £20 million for a week. To extend the programme for the week-long holiday would have cost £20 million. Now, this might sound an awful lot to you and me, but it's actually a drop in the ocean for a large government like the British government. And if you put it into perspective, there was another program, the Eat Out to Help Out program, which was to subsidize meals in restaurants, and that cost £500 million. So 20 million to help feed young children, or 500 million to encourage people to go to restaurants. It all seems a bit strange. So the government has argued that they have actually done quite a lot to help poor families. They've given local authorities, local councils, £63 million, and they've also increased the amount that some poorer people can claim in benefits. So they're saying that the government has done enough and that they don't need to do anything else. Personally, I'm a little conflicted when it comes to this story, because on the one hand, I think it's a very difficult issue. Of course, if you bring children into the world, you need to be responsible for them and you need to support your children and be able to provide for them. But I think we can all say that the situation that we're in at the moment is unprecedented. There are a lot of job losses. People don't know what's going to happen in the future. There's a lot of uncertainty. So that's the very point of a welfare state. If we have a welfare state, it's there to act as a safety net to catch people in turbulent times. The current situation is exceptional, and I really think the Conservative government has made a huge mistake by not extending meals to children who face this holiday hunger, especially given that the cost of doing this was very minimal indeed. Thank you very much for your attention.